gentlemen, welcome back to the Strawberry Hill Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Simmons, and we are almost wrapping up the first season of the podcast, and thank you guys for tuning in and sharing it and subscribing. I really do appreciate that, but if you haven't subscribed, hit that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, like, share, do all the above, and keep us going out there. So welcome back, and I have one of my good friends and former bosses here, Dan Soptic, Sheriff Dan Soptic. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. How you been, man?
Good. How about you?
I've been good, man. Just doing this.
Yeah. Staying busy.
Staying busy. Yeah. How are the holidays?
Good. Good. You and your family have a good holiday?
Good. So we'll get right into it, man.
Right,
so
good.
Sheriff, Wyandotte County, right? How long you been sheriff for?
So finishing up my second year of my first term. So December 13th was technically the end of first 2 years. So it's been good.
It's been good. Good. So where are you from, man? You from Wyandotte County?
Born and raised.
Turner, right?
Turner,
Yeah. So you've been here all your life, right?
I have.
Yeah. So what got you into law enforcement?
You know, it was something I wanted to do from when I was a kid. My dad actually had some friends that were in law enforcement, and I don't know, it was just something I was always drawn to. Wanted to serve in my community somehow, and it was always an interest. And as I got into high school and later into high school, just really piqued my interest. We always had some off-duty officers that worked at the school for sporting events or football games, and you got to know those guys and just kind of caught a bug, I guess.
So when did you start your career?
So I'm going on my 21st year.
21st year
in March. Yeah. So it's been a while. So
what did you do before law enforcement? Did you have any crazy jobs in between, or not in between, before?
No, I worked for my dad doing some construction. That's what he did. Did some retail jobs.
What kind of retail?
Oh man, I worked at an automotive place. I worked at a lumber yard, some stuff like that. Just again, all local stuff though. I never wanted to really leave home.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So you got into law enforcement, and you said 20-some years.
21 years.
Yeah. And so you started off a park ranger, right?
I did. Started off there, and actually prior to that, I worked at the sheriff's office for a short time in detention, and then had left there. Actually went back to work for my dad, and then ended up back in law enforcement with the park rangers.
So what made you go to the park rangers?
So at the time, I was actually
describe what the park rangers are to some people that probably don't know.
Yeah, so I was in two hiring processes at that time, one for the park rangers and one for Kansas City, Missouri, and I stopped the process with Kansas City, Missouri to take the job with Parks. And really what that had to do with was because it was home. And again, I wanted to stay home. Nothing wrong with KCMO, but that wasn't home. It wasn't home. And I really wanted to serve the people that I lived around and grew up with, and, family and friends. So at the time, the county had a park ranger department, and they were the police or the law enforcement for all the parks within the unified government. And it was a separate law enforcement agency. And so the chief at that time interviewed me and hired me, and that's kind of where the whole thing started.
So did you have a love for the outdoors too, or just kind of?
Not necessarily. It was just something that it seemed like a good fit at the time. And I go back to it, but the draw was that it was home, and I would get to be all over the county and not stuck in just one place or one area, and more of a broad area to be responsible for. But what it did do for me is really instill a lot of that, community policing style, just because of all the people that you dealt with from the different activities in the parks, and the way I learned to deal with people as it relates to law enforcement, and that really molded how I am today with people. And so it was very very advantageous for me in my career to start out there.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot. So what's your favorite park in Wyandotte County?
Oh, favorite park. I don't know. It's hard to beat Wyandotte County Lake.
Wyandotte County Lake's something special. If you have not been out there, you guys got to go see it. Because a lot of people, it's like a hidden gem in Wyandotte County.
It is. I mean, it's got a little bit of everything. And even if you're not outdoorsy, it's hard to beat the views and the scenery and the wildlife, and it's an amazing place.
Yeah. So at what point in your career did you decide, hey, I'm going to run for sheriff?
So actually,
I know that's like a loaded question.
It is. As I promoted, and so in 2009, we merged in with the sheriff's office. The park rangers did, and the sheriff at the time was instrumental in getting that done. And so as I promoted through the agency, I knew that I wanted to I wanted to lead an agency, but I didn't necessarily know where. But even at that point, I had that draw to home, and I had that draw to do something locally. And when you're looking to be a chief or lead an agency, there's only so many agencies in your hometown, or even in the area. And because of the way we're structured, we're a little different, having multiple agencies in Wyandotte County, but still your options are limited. And so I can't tell you that there was an exact day where I woke up and said, all right, that's it, I'm gonna that's what I'm gonna do. But I just knew if the opportunity ever presented itself, that I wanted to lead an agency in my hometown. And so when the previous sheriff decided he was going to retire, he and I had that conversation, and it just it seemed like it was the right time if I was going to do it, and so I did.
So since you became sheriff, I guess, what have you done to improve the agency that you're with now? Because you were there before, you kind of saw what was going on and worked with the sheriff previously. So now you're in the spot. Now you got total control.
Sure.
And it's different from running it, from third, second in command.
Right.
Now you're top dog.
Yeah.
So,
well, what I tell people is those that came before me really built that foundation for what we have. And when the previous sheriff left, he left us in a good spot, left us with a foundation to build on. And so that was really my focus. And what that looked like was a couple things. One, try to address our hiring and retention issues. Because there's a lot of stuff that we want to do and that we can do, and probably even that we should do, but you got to have the bodies to do it. At the end of the day, you can't make something be there that's not there, and it stresses people out, and it makes for a stressful work environment when you're, or even more stressful work environment when you're short. And so hiring and retention was number one on the list. But what goes hand in hand with that, and I think really they tie together, is community engagement. And so the goal was to be engaged in the community, tell our story. A lot of people don't understand the difference between sheriff's offices and police and police departments. And so to tell that story at the same time, using those opportunities to recruit, and knowing that if we can recruit and get our numbers up, that automatically leads to better retention, just because it makes the job easier. And when there's less stress, people tend to stay around. And, when there's movement internally and benefits and, salary and things that go along with it, it's all tied together. But it all that put together really makes a difference for some people, rightly so. And so it was a multi-tiered approach, but we knew that it all tied back together. So getting out, telling our story, being present in the community, and just letting people know that we're here and this is what we do, and we've got jobs available, and they're great jobs with great people, and great benefits. But if people don't know you're there, they don't even know to apply.
Very true. And so going back to community engagement, you guys, in the sheriff's office, because I worked there for 15 years, and I've seen over the time since you've took over, it's been a lot of community engagement, which is it's great because you want to get your name out there, like you said. But I guess tell me, what have you done with community engagement, and why is that so important?
Yeah. So, I think it's something that the agency always wanted to do. But when you get in there and you are making those decisions, you do have to decide at what point do you direct resources elsewhere. And that's just kind of what had happened prior. And so it was really for me just to make the conscious effort to redirect some resources and maybe not do some other things in order to get out there and be engaged. So really what it boils down to is, like you said, we had very few events that I would call really community engagement events prior. And by redirecting those resources, I think in 22, we did about 35 or 36 community engagement events, either, barbecues in the parks, or going to recruiting events, or we've had some coffee with cops types events. We've had some women recruiting women events, which was brand new for us. And in doing some research, I think really even new to the area, to the metro area. And so we had, I think, 35 or 36, and then we ended up 2023 with almost 60 community engagement events. Yeah. And they encompassed lots of different things. Any opportunity we could get out with the community, and just be involved with them. Let them know who we are, and what our people do. The majority of our agency does work in detention, and those guys and gals don't necessarily get out and tell their story a lot. And so letting them get out, get their opportunity to tell people what they do, and be involved and be engaged. Again, being engaged with their own neighbors too. They live here also. Yeah. That's made a huge impact. I think it's made an impact internally. It's made an impact on our applicants, the amount of applicants we've had come in, and really just our footprint in the community. And we've had a lot of good feedback from those events. Our footprint with social media, which I know is something you do very heavily with the shop.
It's a hassle, but
it's something you just have to do.
Your digital footprint is very important.
It is. Yeah. And we've had a lot of positive feedback about ours, and a lot of people that, told us we didn't even know you were here.
Yeah, a lot of people don't.
We didn't know what you guys did, and now we do, and they follow us. They come to our events. We've done everything from swimming events. So we wrapped up 2023. We did 2 swimming events down at Parkwood Pool. We paid, staff came together, collected money, and we paid for the first, I think, 150, 200 kids to come swim.
That's awesome.
Offered hot dogs, and again, just gave them the opportunity to meet us. And it's been a great opportunity to partner with other agencies. KCK PD has been a great partner in some of those events. Fire department got involved there towards the end. Even having departments within the unified government, human resources has come out. It's just given us an opportunity to come together and be in the community.
So going back on talk about retention, what's been the struggle with that? Because it's like a pendulum. Because I was in there, so I tell people, it's like you're full, and then the pendulum starts to turn, and then you start losing people, and then you start so why has it been so hard to keep people, and why has it been so hard to hire people? I know it's starting to change now.
It is. Well, I've said this at 2 or 3 speeches that I've given, so I'm not afraid to tell you this, or tell anybody. But our whole profession over the past many years was demonized because of the actions of a few. Yeah. And because of that, I think that some of those that were already in the profession maybe didn't feel supported. We can give the support. We can tell them we're here to support them. But at the end of the day, you turn the news on and all you see is negativity towards your profession. It makes you want to go do something else.
Yeah.
So that was part of the retention issue. And that also ties right back into recruiting. And, we had COVID through those years.
Yeah.
That created a lot of work from home opportunities for people and some alternative opportunities when it comes to income. And, you've been there and done it. You can't do this job from home.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know, like during COVID,
can't do it.
We couldn't just sit there at home and like, all right, we'll police from here.
When you talk about essential staff, which was a term used during COVID, our people were 100% essential because when you dial 911, when somebody's booked into our jail, when there's a service needed that we perform, we had to be there regardless of a pandemic.
Yeah.
And so you put all of that together, and what we saw was, like you said, a pendulum swing of people just, why go do that job? Why go do one of the hardest jobs on the planet? Why go do it when I can do other stuff?
Yep.
And so you talk about it swinging back. I agree. I think it started to. I think communities have recognized, maybe not communities, but there's been groups that have recognized that they may not always agree with us, but the majority of this profession is trying to do the right thing. And when they need help, communities need somebody to respond. And even in the days when our people really were, talked down upon, like I said, demonized, they still answered that call. They still showed up to work every day to detention.
Yep.
They were still there no matter what people said about them. Numbers might have been less, but we were still there. And I think communities are recognizing that. I tell people, for the most part, most communities as a whole still supported law enforcement. It really was a few, but the few that were the biggest opponents were the loudest sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think people have realized there are some things that we could definitely do different. We're not perfect, and I've told people that. Far from it. But the majority of this profession, their heart's in the right place. And so we work through all that together. There's ways to talk about those issues and things that maybe we need to do different or could do different. But destroying an entire profession that really every community relies on is not the way to do it.
Yeah. So you talked about the duties of the sheriff's office and a lot of people not knowing what the sheriff's office does. So I guess let the people know. Like,
let them know.
Yeah. Like what is the difference between the police department and the sheriff's office? That's, I got that question a lot. You get it a lot.
I will try to give you the short answer because I know we only have a little bit of time.
Nah, you can give the long answer. It's fine.
So the shorter answer is, when you look at police departments, they exist and are created because a city wants a law enforcement agency. So a city at some point when they're established or after they're established determines they want their own local municipal police department. And so by some type of ordinance or action internally, they create that police department.
Yeah.
That police department has responsibility within that city, and that is their local law enforcement entity. In the state of Kansas, the office of the sheriff is created through the state constitution. It's an elected position. Police chiefs are appointed by, again, that municipality, either through a city council or some form of government. All the sheriffs, with the exception of one in the state of Kansas, are all elected. And the sheriffs are responsible for that entire county instead of just that city like a police department.
Yeah.
So the responsibility, the authority is different, with the deputy having responsibility throughout the county, police officer having their responsibility in their respective city. So the jurisdiction is usually bigger. And then a police department and a chief, again, is going to be governed through whatever ordinances or laws that city creates. The sheriff is always going to be governed by state statute. And really there's three main statutes that pertain to the big picture of what the sheriff does. And they essentially say the sheriff will maintain the detention center. And then the sheriff will service the courts, meaning civil papers, court security, stuff like that. And then finally, just an overall arching responsibility for the safety of the community. And that's kind of a catch-all.
Did you hit on the jail?
Yeah, that was number one.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that third one's kind of a catch-all for just everything else. So what you see in some communities, some small cities may say they don't want a police department because the cost.
They got the sheriff. Yeah.
So they just use the sheriff's office. Bigger cities typically are going to have police departments. But it really just depends on the part of the country you're in and how they're set up. Everywhere's a little different, but that's the condensed version. But there's a lot of statutes that tell the sheriff, this is how you have to do this. This is what you're going to do. And that's going to be for an entire county. Most police departments, when their stuff is laid out and their responsibilities are laid out, it's very localized and it's more to answering calls for service, 911 calls, those types of things. So it leaves the sheriff's office with a bigger footprint and ultimately, a lot of different specialized things that we have to take care of.
Now, maybe I should know this because I used to be in law enforcement.
I just forgot it.
But does every county need a sheriff office or some type of policing authority? Yeah,
so they are. And like I said, with the exception.
Okay, so I just wasn't throwing that out of my ass. All right,
no, you're right. With the exception of one, they're all going to be elected.
To the exception of one.
Yeah.
Is that Riley County?
Yep. So many years ago, they determined that they would combine their local police department and sheriff's office. And so they no longer have an elected sheriff. That position's appointed through their government. But some legislation here recently would prevent that from happening anywhere else again.
Yeah.
And so moving forward, we'll have every sheriff will be elected in Kansas.
So no merging of PD and sheriff around here.
Not the way they did it back then. A merge could happen, but the only way it could ever happen would be under a sheriff.
Yeah.
And that sheriff would remain to be elected. So no appointed sheriffs.
So 2024, brand new year.
Yep.
So what are you looking to do this year for the agency?
Yeah.
And getting your name out there, or what new things you're trying to do, or anything?
What's kind of difficult about a sheriff's office is, like I said, there's so many specialized things we do that a lot of the stuff internally we're trying to do, people never see. And it's hard to explain sometimes some of the stuff we've done because it's so specialized to us. It's not something that, it's not like putting out a new sticker package on a car. It's not like a new specialized unit. It's more internal things that we do that make the agency better, and ultimately, at the end of the day, make for a better experience for the community. So, we've had a couple jobs that we've created. One is a media specialist. So, as we
did you feel it?
Not yet.
All right, so I still got a shot.
That's right. So as we sat here, using social media for this experience, having somebody that's really all they do is our we talked about our social media footprint. That person, which it's a civilian position, to do that, tie in with our community engagement events, serve some public information officer duties, but mostly ensuring that the public knows who we are, what we do, that we're accessible. That's another thing. A lot of times, people will send emails to me or other folks in the agency and say, I don't know who to contact.
Yeah.
I don't know who to go to for this, or I have this issue. And it shouldn't go to some black hole of emails. It needs to go somewhere and somebody that can get them pointed in the right direction and not just, push them around to different phone extensions, which we've all been, we all experienced that. Mm-hmm. Getting people in contact with who they need to be in contact with, and getting answers to questions. And so we have that job posted. We've got some other things internally that we're doing, some other jobs that we're creating, again, that it's not necessarily for public discussion, but things that we're doing that just make us a better agency. And at the end of the day, a better product for the community. And we really want to focus on, finding a way, now that we've created this community engagement piece and we've seen it flourish, what's the next steps?
Yeah.
How do we utilize that to our advantage and to the community's advantage? We're about 35 or so still short.
It's always an uphill battle.
It is an uphill battle, but my goal would be by the end of this year for that number to be significantly smaller.
Yeah.
And I think we are on the right path. We've got another class that we're going to start at the end of January. And we are moving in a direction that we could possibly see. I don't know that we'll see that number cut in half, but maybe close to, which would be huge. And again, it turns out a better product for the community. Mm-hmm. And it lets us just do some other things and be involved in some other groups and community groups that could use that helping hand and could use, the assistance of law enforcement. So really, putting to work now that foundation that we've built with community engagement. And as we have issues in the community, being able to use those contacts that we've gained to help us solve those problems. Wyandotte County it's an amazing place. It's why I never wanted to leave. Mm-hmm. And we have local businesses coming in. We've got, just like your business that's come in, and to keep those businesses coming in and keeping them thriving, our communities need to be safe.
Yeah. And
our police departments, all of them, do an amazing job at that. But they can't do it on their own. And so, for the part of that we do serve, as a supplement to their patrol functions and their investigative functions, we want to be there to help assist with those. And in order to put more people out in patrol and in some of those positions, we've got to get some of these other jobs filled. Mm-hmm. And so that's really our goal, is to be available and accessible, not only to the community, but to the other agencies that just need the help. And so that's really where we're moving. We get to the end of this year, I don't want there to be near as many people that go, who's the sheriff's office and what do they do? Yeah. I want it to be, oh yeah, I've met those guys, or I've seen those guys. Well, I think you guys
are doing a good job with your digital footprint. And like you said, because I was going to ask you a question, why it's important to have such a good digital footprint and social media, but you answered it because all the above. I mean,
well, sure.
Because this is a new generation. You want to get your name out there in the right outlets, because just by word of mouth isn't really working anymore.
No, and what we saw from community policing days in the past decades, and when community policing really first started in KCK, relationships were built back then. Mm-hmm. And our community has really avoided a lot of some of the turmoil that we've seen in other communities because those relationships existed. Yeah. And because there was a trust then. And we've continued with that, Chief Oakman and I talk a lot about that. And, particularly with that being the big city here, and how we continue those relationships. And the ones we don't have, we build them. we know there's always going to be some that just don't agree, and that's okay. But we can still communicate, we can still talk, and we can still have a relationship. And so, but you've got to have one to have the other. You got to have people know who you are and what you do and why you do it to even start to build that relationship. And so, yeah, it really is. It's all intertwined together.
Yeah. So going back to community engagement and doing stuff like that, I'm gonna throw this out there for you. Well, this is. I want to see Polar Plunge, Wyandotte County Lake, featuring the sheriff.
Polar Plunge.
Jumping in the lake.
Really?
When it's like 20 degrees outside.
Really? You do, huh?
Yeah, I would pay to see that.
Oh, really? How much?
I don't know. It just depends. You got to put it out there.
Well, I will tell you that there's nothing that we have shied away from yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess, unfortunately for me, since you've brought it up, that's
now you got to make it in motion.
That's something that we'll have to put the people
so
on.
You could drive the boat out there, jump off.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm huge in doing things that benefit our community and benefit organizations in our community. Mm-hmm. And I know there's several of those that go on across the country, and so we'll have to. I will put my people on exploring that.
Yeah. Get you out there.
Yeah,
raise some money though. You're not doing it for free.
That's what it's all about. It's all about supporting the organizations in the community, and that's the other part of the community engagement is bringing awareness to the groups. There's a lot of groups out there that are trying to do good. There's only so much money available. There's only so much grant money. There's only so much of that.
Yeah.
But what we do know is there's a lot of people out there that want to support groups and want to be involved. And so anytime that we can bring awareness to a group, awareness to a need, awareness to a local establishment, what better way to use our name power than that? So
yeah. So you've worked at the sheriff's office or been in law enforcement 20 some odd years, and you've been with the sheriff's office for a long time. What is your favorite thing about the Wyandotte County Sheriff's Office?
It's got to be the people.
Eclectic group of people it is.
It is,
I always tell people it's like the most dysfunctional family that you love.
Yeah. I've been to multiple commission meetings and spoken in front of multiple groups, and I've told them all that we have some of the best people.
We do, or I say like I'm still there.
But you're right when you say we, because it's our community, and so it is our people, if you will. But I wouldn't say it if I really didn't think it. And so it's got to be the people. It's got to be, the experiences that we have every day with those people. Not all good. I mean, I'd be lying if I said it was all good. That's just the reality of it. But there's always somebody to make you laugh or make you think or give you a different perspective. That's got to be the best. And then I think a close second, which is really related to the first, is again being able to be in this community and be involved and know that that one day, the people that we are serving today, particularly the young population, will hopefully stay in this community or bring people into this community, and it'll be their county and cities one day, and we'll get to sit back and hopefully look at the positive things we've done, and we've left them with safe communities, safe streets, or safer, and get to see them thrive and be retired and set back, and that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. So leads me to my next question. So you told me what's your favorite part of the sheriff's office. Now, what's your favorite part about Wyandotte County?
So I think it's got to be, again, the people, but more specifically, our food selection.
Oh yeah.
I don't know that there's anything. Yeah, maybe a few things, but almost there's not anything you can't not get. I mean, and it's the best of everything, whether it's barbecue, whether it's Mexican, whatever type of food you might want, the pizza selections, I mean, you name it. And so many of them are locally owned, or small business, which I love. But again, that goes back to the people, just the diversity and the makeup of our community. You get it all. I don't know where else, at least locally, that you would live, that you would get to be experienced to so much.
Yeah. A lot of diversity in Wyandotte County.
Yeah. And in the school systems, it's the same way. I mean, I think our kids that graduate from this community, and regardless of the district, maybe more some than others, but regardless, they're getting to be experienced or exposed to so much, and that should produce a very well-rounded individual.
Yeah,
I know that's what I hope for my child, and I think it makes for a better person when they're grown up. So,
all right. So you said you started off with food. So now you got to give me like your top 2 or 3 restaurants.
Don't put me on the spot.
Yeah. Hey, you threw it out there. Now I gotta test you. You gotta just give me 3. I don't want to say 1 because then you're gonna single out a lot of people.
Yeah.
But now you're gonna just at least give me 2 or 3.
Oh man. Oof. That's hard. That is.
Or you know what? Just tell me some of your favorites.
Okay.
There you go.
So I'm an Italian Delight fan.
Shout out to Renee.
Yeah. I'm an Amigos fan.
Yeah.
Really.
I feel like a lot of people don't know about Amigos.
Yeah, over in Turner.
Yeah, and that is damn good food.
It is very good.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a lot of very authentic Mexican food. That's really hard to put some names on, but Nympha's is hard to beat.
Yeah.
I mean, you go in there,
tortillas.
Eat a load of tortillas.
Yeah.
But Christie's Burgers, again over in Turner.
Yep. Now you go in the Turner area.
Yeah. I mean, I just
feel like it's a must. If you live in Turner, you have to
at some point
eat Christie's or
right.
Yeah.
At some point you've got to go and visit it. But again, all local small business, generational businesses, which are important to communities. So yeah, it's pretty hard for me to find something I don't like. So for sure.
All right. So what's one thing that you're doing, I guess, because you talked about community engagement and stuff like that to help improve the relationship with the community. But what's something else that you're trying to do to kind of improve or bridge that gap between policing and community engagement? I know like community engagement is such a big thing.
It is.
But is there like anything else that you're trying to do that's trying to?
Well, so one thing I've told people, we went out and here recently we did 3, for lack of a better term, coffee with cop events. We tried to do them in different parts of the county. So we did one downtown, we did one in the south end, we did one out in Bonner. And I think the way you bridge that gap is you try and be all over the county, which is sometimes harder to do because, for whatever reason, you, particularly in law enforcement, you do get drawn to different parts of the community based on the needs of that part of the county. But putting all that aside, being out, maybe in places you don't normally go out, even if there's not a need, even if there's not a problem, which, we tend to be a reactive profession just by nature. And so to be proactive instead and get out into some of these communities that maybe don't have necessarily an issue or a problem, but again, that just don't know us.
Yeah.
And, it could be that one coffee conversation with one person at one event that, spurs a conversation that leads to something great, that leads to, opening the door to help some other organization in the community or solve a problem that didn't even know was there. Not that we're necessarily out, looking to drum up business, but we do want people to know who to call and how to access those services when they need them. And so I think that's how you bridge the gap. And then in areas of the community where we know that maybe there tends to be distrust, I've stood in many groups and told them that I'll go to anywhere, to any group at any time, and talk about anything, and have honest conversations. They may not always like my answer, but I'm always going to be honest with them. And I'm always going to tell them.
I think people respect that.
Right. Yeah. And why we do what we do, which again, I think goes a long way, explaining, why things happen the way they do. Some of it may be because that's best practice for our profession. Some of it may be that a state law tells me I have to. But a lot of times people don't know that. And when you're able to give them that explanation and explain why you do it, sometimes that's all people need. Yeah. To understand. And I think keeping those lines of communication open and never giving up. Even when you disagree, we can agree to disagree. Even when you disagree, we don't just shut you out. We don't just stop listening. I'll come back as many times as you want. We can talk about it as many times as you want. That's how you bridge those gaps. And when there is an issue, which at some point there will be, no doubt, something's going to happen. We address it. We deal with it internally per our policies and our procedures. And then we move forward however we need to move forward. And if that is with training, if that is, unfortunately sometimes it can lead to discipline of an employee. Or maybe the employee did everything right once we investigated it. But maybe we change a procedure because of how something happened. Being open to that, and reassuring the public we're gonna deal with anything that comes our way. That's how you do that, in my opinion.
So now it's time to kind of get to know Dan.
Oh boy.
Some things that people probably don't even know about. So I guess when you're not at work, which you're probably working most of the time anyway.
A lot.
Yeah, because being the sheriff is like running your own business.
Right.
You're there a lot. You got to, a lot falls on your shoulders. But when you're not at work, I guess, what do you like to do? What are some of your interests, man?
So I'm a piddler. I like to just kind of piddle at the house. You talked about outdoors earlier. I'm definitely a boater or a recreational boater, but more just kind of hanging out and enjoying the weather, enjoying the sun. Some involvement with cars and tinkering with cars and fixing cars. Construction's always been in my blood, so there's always a project around the house. But I like to stay busy. I don't like to.
We got a lot of stuff to do here.
I bet you do. I bet you do. I think you have an in-house carpenter, though, right?
Yeah, but I could always use another one.
But yeah, just staying busy. The family keeps me busy. Trying to spend as much time as I can with them, because you're right. The phone is either always ringing or an email is always coming in, and so trying to not waste the time with the family and be with them, and just enjoying life and what's around us, and
so I guess that's
not squandering.
I'm glad you said that. So how do you separate work-life balance? How do you balance that, especially when you get home?
It's hard.
Because phones, and a lot of people don't realize that with law enforcement. Phone's always on. You're constantly on call most of the time. I mean, for most people, if you're a detective, SWAT, sheriff, commander, you're constantly on call.
Sure.
So how do you separate the work-life balance?
Well, it's hard. Having good people underneath me to make decisions is one of the first things. But there's ultimately things that just need my blessing, if you will. So it is hard. Having a family that understands that, when the phone rings, sometimes I can ignore it, but more times than not, I'm going to take it, even if it's in the middle of dinner or a movie or vacation, which happens. And so, they've been around it long enough that they get that. Having a supportive wife that understands that.
Yeah.
And the times you can, I think what's so important is when the phone's not ringing or the emails not coming in, you take advantage of that time.
Yeah.
Because you never know when the next thing's going to happen that, it's going to take you away from that. So maybe as corny as it sounds, living in that moment of nothing and trying to take advantage of that, which is hard. You get home, you're tired. Family's tired. They've had a long day. School was long. Work was long. And so when you have the moments, taking advantage of them, it's hard to separate.
Yeah. So tell me something about you that people will be like, I didn't know that about Dan. Maybe anything. Hopefully something crazy.
Something crazy.
No, it didn't have to be crazy. But something that's like, oh, I didn't know that about him.
So I've always been into cars. And I used to buy and sell a lot of cars. Just personal. Never was a business or nothing. But me and my wife figured it up here a while back, and since I got my driver's license, I've owned somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 cars.
Jeez. I didn't know that about you. That's a lot of cars.
Yeah, I was a big car guy, and trucks and different things. And so I'd buy one and didn't like it, so I'd sell it or upgrade to another one or sell one and buy two.
So how many are you at now? Do you just have like 2 cars now?
3, yeah.
So you're like, I don't live that life anymore. But.
Yeah. But I was big into, I'd buy one and fix it up and drive it for a while and then sell it and do something different. And particularly when I was real young, out of high school, I was always buying and selling cars. And so it was always just for personal reasons. But I'd see one, that's cool, and save up the money and go buy it. Yeah, I kind of got out of that. So, yep.
So tell me, I guess, you got an election coming up and you've been the sheriff, you got a lot of stuff. You're still young. What is like your 5-year goal? I know that I don't want to do too long.
Sure.
But like, what's your 5-year goal? That could be with you, could be with the agency.
Sure.
Whatever, however you want to spin it.
So, you're right. My next election will be in 2025. And I definitely, plan on running again. I'm not done by any means. And we've come a long way, but there's still a lot more to do. And when the time comes that I am done, I want to leave the agency better than I found it, better than I got it. And when you open up our website, one of the first things it says is we're a full service law enforcement agency.
Yeah.
Which is true, by definition. But you can always do things better, and you can always do more, and you can always broaden your footprint. And so to provide the community, the community's changed over the years, and the expectation from the community has changed. And sometimes that expectation is reasonable. Sometimes, I think, again, us getting out and explaining why maybe we can't do something that somebody wants us to do has to happen. But the goal would be to get through the election in 25, obviously be reelected, and continue down this path of serving the community the way I would want the sheriff's office to serve it if I wasn't the sheriff. And the way I look at that is if I was not in law enforcement and I needed the assistance of law enforcement, or I was the one dialing 911, or my wife was the one dialing 911, or at some point my daughter, what response would I want them to have? And that's how I look at everything that I do. And I think until you can say, yeah, that's don't want to say perfect, but that's my expectation for the agency. Until I can say that, I'm not done.
Yeah.
And I'm not done yet. Not that we're doing anything wrong. We're doing good stuff. We've got good people. But there's a lot more that we can do, and things we can always improve on, things we can do better and different. But, a lot of that it does hinge on having the bodies to do it. So continually, working to be progressive in the sense of innovative and working towards, either technology or better ways to do things, more efficient ways to do things, and staying relevant and aggressive in hiring. I tell people the military figured it out a long time ago. You recruit and you never stop recruiting.
Yeah.
Which is why there's, recruiting stations in cities all over the country. And, you talk about community engagement. You go to county fairs, you go to these, and the military is always there. Mm-hmm. We have to model ourselves when it comes to recruiting in that fashion. Mm-hmm. That's really what I've tried to do. And my goal would be in the next 5 years to look back and say, man, in 2024, we'd accomplished a lot, but here we are, and we are closer to providing that perfect service to the community.
Yeah, that's
my goal.
It's a pretty good goal.
So, well, yeah, I think it is. And again, there'll come a day when I'm not the sheriff and I'm not in law enforcement.
When you were out there just selling more cars. And
doing whatever I'm doing. And at that time, when my daughter or whoever needs the assistance of law enforcement, I want to at least know that when I left it looked the best that it could look at that time. Because our kids are going to be the future of this community. Mm-hmm. We've got to leave it in a spot that's good for them and gives them an opportunity to put their stamp on it. But it's got to be a safe community.
I like that answer.
That's the goal.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
Well, my friend, it's been a pleasure.
It has.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the offer.
Of course.
When you told me that you were going to start this business, I was excited for you from day one.
Yeah.
And you've turned it into this. It's an amazing place.
Thank you. I appreciate your support too.
Well, local businesses, and it doesn't matter what community, but obviously I'm more partial to
local,
our community. Mm-hmm. But any community that can spawn and support local businesses. You've always got my vote. And you guys are doing great things. Strawberry Hill for a guy that has that Croatian lineage. Mm-hmm. Strawberry Hill obviously holds a special place for me, and so being here is awesome.
Yeah,
it definitely hits home, and so I know the community is thankful for guys like you that.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate
start these businesses and keep them going, even when it's maybe not easy.
It's definitely not easy.
Yeah.
I'm learning that, but I love it. I wouldn't change for the world.
I get that, but you guys are doing great things.
Yeah.
And definitely, a shout out to everybody at the sheriff's office. And we've got an amazing group of people from, our deputies to all of our civilians, mm-hmm. all of our support staff. Our deputies are the ones doing that, that day-to-day work. And it's definitely, it's not easy most days. But our civilians and support staff that are doing, the other jobs, there's so much that wouldn't happen without them.
Yeah.
And the little things you don't think about, but when they stop happening, you realize pretty quick how much everybody plays a part. Mm-hmm. So definitely thankful to them and all of our law enforcement, public safety, fire department, police department, all of our cities, great partners in everything we do. And I know you had some interactions over the years with some federal law enforcement partners. And one thing that the feds will tell you in our community is that locally we work together probably better than anywhere they've ever seen. Yep. And that goes so far and that really is what makes this community great.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Of course. And if you guys want to get in law enforcement, if you're looking for a job, sheriff office is hiring.
That's right.
Great place to start a career.
Absolutely.
I'm a little biased myself.
Hey,
but
start, stay, and retire.
Start, stay, retired. Any of the above.
That's right.
Well, like I said, I appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for tuning in. Please like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that stuff, all that jazz. Keep following us on everything on the social media platforms. And I appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week. I'm out.
Goodbye, everybody.